right, come on in, everybody. We're going to just give it a minute for all of our participants to start populating, and then we will get started. All right, you're getting quite a who's who of participants here on this snowy day in Berks County. That's fantastic. So hello, come on in and welcome. This is Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. My name is Dawn Pfeiffer-Wrights, and I am one of the 3 LionSide Chat moderators, working alongside Sonia De La Cueto and Ryan Hassler to bring you, our campus, and our local community these LionSide Chats. Before we get started, I wanted to point out there are a few differences with this chat from our previous chats. We will not be using the raise hand feature or the chat in the webinar, and there will also not be a question and answer session at the end. We're so glad that you can join us today for this special chat featuring a conversation with our Chancellor, Dr. Hillkirk. What started as a conversation between 3 colleagues during quarantine in the spring, these LionSide Chats have blossomed into an amazing showcase of the talents of our faculty, staff, and students. Since that quarantine conversation, we've been able to offer a total of 39 LionSide Chats, 16 over the summer and 23 in the fall. We've reached 2,343 people over these 39 total chats. We've offered a series on COVID-19, preparing for college. We've collaborated with offices around our campus to offer the freshman year seminar We Are series, as well as an important partnership with Penn State Berks Social Justice Collaborative, offering the Race 101 Critical Conversation series. There have been many folks on our campus that have supported the LionSide Chat idea, but one of our biggest supporters of these chats has been Dr. Hillkirk. My co-moderators, Ryan and Sonia, and I are grateful to Dr. Hillkirk for seeing beyond the kernel of the idea that was initially considered to this vibrant, robust space of sharing ideas and information in the true sense of collegiality. And so without further delay, I'd like to welcome Dr. Keith Hillkirk as our special guest for our final LionSide Chat of 2020. Chancellor Hillkirk, thank you so much for all of your support of our important project, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dawn. Glad to.
Yeah, I'm very excited that we have this opportunity to chat with you and to and just hear some of your perspectives and your reflections and your lessons learned on a long-standing career in higher education, right?
Sounds good.
As we talked in our pre-interview conversation last week, you mentioned that you've been working for almost 50 years. That's fabulous to me and fantastic. And as you're approaching your retirement right now, what are you going to miss most about working in general?
Well, first, actually, it's been 52 years, Dawn, since
I
began teaching as a Peace Corps volunteer many years ago. But it's been really a great experience. Suzanne and I were Peace Corps volunteers in Malaysia. We taught elementary school, math and science. Came back, and I was a high school English teacher for about 12 years, I guess, altogether. And then went to Penn State, did my doctorate, and then started about a little over 30 years ago working in higher ed. And it's been very rewarding. The time has flown by, and I'm very, very thankful for the opportunities that I've had to work with a lot of great people. So.
That's great. I love hearing that. And I was not aware of the Peace Corps piece of that. So maybe someday you and I can have a conversation about that. That would be awesome. Can you talk with us a little bit? So let me back up by saying we're going to go in a number of different directions with our conversation. And one of the things that I'm very interested in is your view on the state of higher education. Obviously, the last 9 months have been, I won't use the unprecedented word, but unprecedented. And, you know, things have probably changed. If I would have asked you this question in February, you may have had a different answer. But what is your view right now on the state of higher ed?
Well, in terms of the pandemic, I think, has had some surprisingly positive impacts in certain ways, but also some negative impacts. And I'm going to talk about the positives first that I see, and then I'll talk about some of the negatives. You remember back in March when all of a sudden we were told that the students were not going to come back after spring break. And almost on a dime, our faculty had to move from in-person teaching to remote teaching, and students, of course, to remote learning. And I think that we were all extremely anxious about that, but it's been actually a very positive experience to see how deeply committed our faculty and our staff and our students as well, but how our faculty and staff rallied. I think within a day or two, you were one of the faculty. There were about a dozen faculty who sent messages out to the whole campus and said, if I can help in any way, I've had a little bit of experience here teaching remotely, I'd be glad to help my colleagues. And, you know, wonderfully, that's what happened. The support from our Center for Teaching and Learning as well, and our staff on the campus, I think has been phenomenal. Our IT folks scrambled to make sure that everybody who needed technology support got it. I've heard so many positives about all of those things. And so I think that what's happened is our expertise collectively in how to use technologies like the technology that we're using right now, I think it's been an amazing change that's occurred. And I'm very, very proud of just the team spirit that I've seen across the campus. There is a group that meets every Friday, has met for months now. Every Friday, it's our COVID management, emergency management team. Those people are folks in health services. I mean, it's just been phenomenal what I've witnessed. And beyond that, I think that the university has really overall done a wonderful job in terms of trying to manage this very difficult, complex challenge. We've had, of course, some cases. Relatively few here at Berks, more at UP, but that was expected. It's a much larger campus population. But I think all in all, the university's response has been thoughtful. The planning process has been amazing. I have thought often about Dwight Eisenhower's comments about planning. I think sometime around D-Day, he was asked about the plan for the invasion. My understanding is that his response was, plans are useless, planning is essential. And it's been that way for us through this process. I mean, I've been, like many people, in Zoom meetings every day, one after the other, but it's been great because there's been so much need for communication and for everybody. And beyond that, being able to be flexible and adapt quickly as needed. So that's been a very positive thing. I think as well, not only have we learned about the technology, but I think that there's some positive effects of the technology that we were already seeing. Penn State is very much involved in sustainability. Typically every month, a number of us at Berks and across the entire university have been driving to State College or elsewhere for various meetings. Everything now is done the way we're doing this. Yep. That has some very positive impacts, and in the long term could have some very positive effects on reducing our carbon footprint, which could be very positive as well. Now, on a more negative side, the pandemic, of course, has caused declines in enrollment, not only for us, but also for probably just about every college in the country, I would think. And it's posed, some enormous challenges for families, for students. It's caused a decline in revenue for families and individuals, but also for universities like Penn State. That presents some other challenges. Of course, Pennsylvania as a state is going to face a real budget challenge, like every other state, I anticipate in the country. So those are some negative effects. In addition, Penn State is one of the greatest universities, not only in this country, but in the world. And collectively, our universities, public and private, represent the best higher education collectively, again, in the world. And that's the reason that thousands upon thousands of international students come to Penn State to earn. Historically, it's been more at the graduate level, but increasingly we get baccalaureate students, as for example, at Berks. A couple of years ago, we had 100 international students at Penn State Berks. We have fewer now, but I'm hoping that will rebound. But the other, I think, coupled with the pandemic, our society in the last few years has had, our leadership has had sort of a negative global perspective compared to the past. And that has had some implications on the number of international students who come to this country to study. And I think that that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for revenue and enrollment reasons, but it's also unfortunate because I remember a professor of mine when I was in graduate school talking about how wonderful it was that Penn State, like many other universities, has all of these students who come from all around the world come to earn particularly advanced degrees from Penn State. And his point was, imagine that we are helping to educate and prepare the leaders, the future leaders of countries around the world, and the impact that that can have on American influence, but also the way that this country is perceived internationally. So I think that's been a negative. I think that the decline in international enrollments. And then, of course, the pandemic has also had the effect of speeding things up in terms of higher ed collectively was already dealing with reduced numbers of high school graduates. And that's, we know very well in Pennsylvania, also a lot of other parts of the country. And so unfortunately, I think that we're going to see more and more colleges across the country who are going to really struggle financially, and some have already closed. And we anticipate that's going to continue. I think Penn State's going to be okay because Penn State has had very strong leadership, and from a financial perspective, I think that we're going to make it through this. I mean, in that regard, even though we're called Pennsylvania State University, we are at this point an affiliate of the state and receive about 5 or 6% of our overall budget from the state. Now that's still $300+ million annually, but the fact that more and more of our budget has been driven by, of course, tuition, which is very true, and that's taken a hit. But philanthropy, private giving has become increasingly important at Penn State, and of course at a lot of other universities. And during this time, it's playing a particularly important role. So those are some of the things that I'm observing, Dawn. I think that once we get through this, there is going to be a period, and everybody's predicting this, of recovery. It's not going to happen immediately, but I do think that this university is going to be okay. But we got some challenges ahead, even after the vaccine becomes available.
Yeah, and I appreciate your perspective on that, and I see that it'll be an interesting roadway ahead for all of us to sort of see what these new normals become, and some of the things that might become a priority on our campus and at the university that we may not have considered as much in the past. The private donations and that kind of thing, we might spend more time in those arenas. So I think there's a lot of value in what you said, and I appreciate your comments about that. Thank you. So my next question for you, as you're moving on into your greater pastures here, we are going to be welcoming a new chancellor shortly in the next month. What is your advice to our campus community about moving forward under new leadership? What would you want to say to everyone listening today?
Well, I think, first of all, as I mentioned a moment ago, Penn State Berks is a very I would describe Penn State Berks as a very welcoming and collaborative campus community. That has been evidenced through the pandemic. So I have no doubt that Dr. George Grant, who will be the next chancellor, is going to be welcomed by the campus in a very positive way. I certainly was, and I'm confident that Dr. Grant will be as well. He and I have gotten to know one another a bit, and I know that he's been in a number of meetings, some with me, but also meetings with various people on the campus. It's given him a chance to get some grounding in Penn State Berks and also Penn State University. And he's a seasoned administrator and leader. He's been a dean at Grand Valley State for many years. So he comes with a very rich background. So this is just, now I'm going to shift over to an even more personal opinion about one of the things that Suzanne and I learned during Peace Corps training was when you're coming into a new place, and in that case, going into a very different culture, it's wise to spend some time just observing, listening, and be careful not to fall into the trap of being very judgmental about this new place. And again, I'm confident that Dr. Grant has that kind of patience and wisdom and insight. And I hope the campus, and I anticipate that the campus will have the same attitude, if you will, in terms of, continuing to be very collaborative, very open. And one thing that I've learned over these last decades is be really careful about taking self-credit, and instead realize that just about everything that gets done, in my opinion, gets done through a lot of teamwork. And that certainly has been the case, but in the decade that I've been here at Berks, previously at Schuylkill, and throughout my career, it's always been a partnership. It's always been people working together to make things happen. And a leader's role, I think, is to do the best that they possibly can to support and sort of energize and have the back of the faculty and the staff and the students. And speaking of the students, I've been so impressed. I talked earlier about the pandemic. Our students have been wonderful. I mean, they've been very mature about this in terms of masking and physical distancing. We've had very, very few cases at Berks. We're very fortunate, even though the community around us has had a much higher prevalence of the virus. And that's a testament to everybody who's part of our campus. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I am one of the faculties that have done the mixed mode. So I've been in the classroom with students a couple times a week. There has literally been not one time since we started back in August where I've had to comment to somebody about putting on a mask or anything like that. Our students really have been good troopers from that perspective. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dr. Hillkirk, tell me what your happiest experience at Berks has been.
Well, I think I just alluded to it. My happiest experience has been watching the campus continue to build upon. There's always been engagement on the campus in the community and with the larger community. But over the last few years, it's been really, really exciting and rewarding. You remember when St. Joseph's, the Catholic hospital in Reading and in Berks County, was purchased by Penn State Health about 5 years ago. We immediately reached out to them, and we sat down together and we asked the question, what could we possibly do together that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do separately? And it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding to work together. And I'll give you a quick example of that. We had a Vista volunteer who was here at the time who became so impressive to both St. Joseph's and to Penn State Berks that we hired her full time. And now Lisa is 50% St. Joe's, 50% Penn State Berks, leading a research project called Veggie RX that's really looking closely at food access and nutrition in the city, where physicians are able to give scripts that can help their patients be able to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables at a farm stand that we've started together right at their downtown campus. Those kinds of things have been so exciting to be able to watch. And of course, then Eric Barron came back from being away from Penn State. He was a dean at Penn State when I was in graduate school 30 years ago. Came back as president about 4 years ago and announced the Invent Penn State program. And now we have a launch box downtown at Goggleworks Arts Center, Cultural and Arts Center, where we're working with local entrepreneurs to help them with startups and a variety of different businesses. That's been really exciting and fun to see happen. And now we're involved in another feasibility study with the DoubleTree and St. Joseph's that has the potential to involve our hospitality management program, our faculty and students, in working with DoubleTree staff, but also others in the hospitality industry to help staff, the current employees there to continue to develop professionally and expand their horizons, and then as well as create new internship opportunities for our hospitality management students. So those things are just very exciting, and actually they cut across the entire college. You mentioned, or earlier we chatted just a little bit about the social justice work that's going on the campus and the certificate that's being offered. And our faculty across all three of our academic divisions have stood up and said, we've got to address systemic racism. And so much already has happened and is continuing to happen because of faculty, staff, and students who are working hard together to focus on issues of discrimination and injustice. And much of that work also is increasingly, particularly once we get off through the pandemic, involving the larger community as well. And that's very exciting and rewarding.
And I agree. And I love listening to you talk about all of these collaborations and these experiences. I hear a lot about them in my role as a faculty member, but hearing them from your perspective brings them to light in a different way. And I appreciate that. You've talked about a number of things that I might consider achievements, but is there one or two things in your tenure as chancellor that you would say is your most noteworthy achievement?
Well, I hope, I hope that, and my sense is that Penn State Berks today is has built upon its rich traditions, but I think that we are a very welcoming campus. I see that, I sense that on the part of a lot of people. I mean, just for example, back to the social justice piece and to anti-racism education and the various things that are happening there, the engagement in the community. And I just shared a few examples. There's so many others. I think that all of those things speak very highly of the quality of the academic community at Penn State Berks is and represents. My first year was I think it was my first year. So it was about almost 10 years ago, we did our first Berks homecoming. If I remember correctly, 10 alumni came. And what's happened now over these last years is now, well, I remember the last homecoming we were at a large room in a local restaurant later in that day for a social event, and it was elbow to elbow. I mean, I think there were 100, maybe between 100 and 200 people there. So it's been fun to see the support and the engagement of the campus continue to grow. And then, how many years have you been at Berks now, Dawn?
This is my 6th academic year now.
Okay. So just when you came, we were adding additional 4-year degrees. I think in 1 year we added 6, if I remember correctly. So what's happened is exactly what we hoped would happen, which is each year, more and more of our students are staying at Berks and completing their entire Penn State degree at Penn State Berks. That has had a lot of positive impacts on the campus. I think that the campus has become increasingly a true 4-year baccalaureate college. Secondly, I think that the opportunity for faculty to work with upper division students and the benefits that upper division juniors and seniors bring to the campus in terms of leadership and athletics and academics in so many different areas has been very positive. And a lot of those things I think are related to my sense that the campus is really going to continue to thrive. The building project that's going on right now of the new Beaver Athletics and Wellness Center is going to create a much more welcoming experience for prospective students and their families when they come and visit. You know, up to now, when students come and one of the things that students, when they first visit, want to see is the fitness center. Well, unfortunately, up till now, when they come and they visit the fitness center, especially during the warmer months, is it's a sauna because it's not air conditioned. So there's a lot of really wonderful things that are happening right now that I think are very positive. But the thing that is most exciting to me in terms of my overall experience in higher ed, my daughter, who's in graduate school, asked me this question a while back, and I said, that's an easy one. The most rewarding thing is watching a freshman come and they're anxious, they're uncertain. In many cases, they're a bit insecure, which I remember being as a freshman. And then to see them almost like a butterfly just transform into this, emerging adult over their time here at Berks, and the investments that faculty and staff make in those students. Frankly, that's the reason that I'm waited to retire till I'm almost 75 years old, because it's so rewarding. That's been the highlight.
That's awesome. And I completely understand that. And that's why I'm still here in higher ed doing what I do, for that very reason, watching that transformation that you described so eloquently. I appreciate that. Thank you. And for those of us, our colleagues that are watching today, if you haven't been on campus and seen the Beaver project going on, you need to drive through, take a peek. It's remarkable. Every day that I come in, it's neat to see the progress. So that's a pretty neat legacy to have too, I would imagine. Is there one thing, Dr. Hillkirk, that you wish you would have been able to accomplish while you were at Berks that you didn't get to?
Well, yeah, I wish there are a few philanthropic gifts that I wish we would have been able to get, honestly.
Yeah.
The reason is that those gifts make such a difference, because once an endowment, for example, is created, and I'll just mention the Cohen-Hamill Fellows. The Cohens and the Hamills, two wonderful couples, all Penn State alumni. Each couple gave us $1.5 million. So we have this $3 million plus endowment because we got some university matching funds. And what that is doing is it's enabling us to bring and support some really outstanding students to come to Penn State Berks. Ultimately, we're going to have 16 of those undergraduate fellows at the campus, and they're going to cut across all of our majors and divisions. And it's so exciting to see something like that, that you worked hard to create, and then see that it actually, blossom and develop. And that's been very, very exciting and rewarding. So there have been a few other gifts that we worked hard on, and we were hoping that we would get that would be truly similarly transformative. So yeah, that's one thing that I wish that but I also have to remember to be deeply grateful for things such as what the Hamills and Cohens have done, and so many other people who are so supportive of Penn State Berks. Dave Delosier, our Director of Development, and I and others, Melissa Edwards, who works with him, we've been very fortunate in terms of the support from the community. You think about things like the Fleming Center, Engage Building, and so many other examples of where in many cases Penn State alumni, but in other cases people that really didn't go to Penn State but are still willing to make significant personal investments in our students, in our students' futures.
Well, I will tell you, I've had in the courses that I teach a couple of the Cohen-Hamill's students, and they are fantastic individuals, and I have enjoyed getting to know them, and I look forward to the next couple of years as that program continues to develop. Let me see, is there one thing, looking back on your career in general, in this perspective of hindsight being 2020, that you would do differently if you were to do it all over again, sort of knowing what you know now?
Well, I might have, as I said, I taught and I was actually a basketball coach for many years as well. I might have maybe gone back to graduate school a little sooner. The experience in higher ed has been so rewarding. I loved teaching. I loved coaching very much. But you know what? I feel so grateful for the career that the life that Suzanne and I've had. She and I have been married. We got married in 1968 when I was just out of college, and we left a month later to go to Peace Corps training, and
Wow.
it's been a lot of fun. It's been very rewarding. So not really, no big regrets. I would say that the higher ed experience has been exciting. It's been I remember a professor in college said to me once, Keith, you ought to think about a career in higher ed. And he said, it's where the action is. Now, that was back in the 60s when it was really where the action was. But also, I realized, now that in a lot of ways, I think he's right about that. Colleges and universities tend to be places where there are lots of ideas bouncing around and people who are willing to try different things. And that keeps you energized. Sometimes it makes you tired, but it also can keep you energized.
Well, I appreciate that. Do me a favor, and this wasn't on part of the conversation that we discussed in our pre-chat conversation, but when you were a student back at Allegheny College in the Phi Delta Theta fraternity, did you ever think that you might be the chancellor of a Penn State campus or anything like that? Was there any part of your experience in your fraternity that led you to think that you might wind up in a leadership role in higher ed?
No, I don't think so. I actually, Dawn, I thought I was going to go to law school. I had been accepted into law school from Malaysia while we were in the Peace Corps, but my wife and I had some really serious health issues. Suzanne came down with malaria shortly after we came back. I had dysentery a couple times. When we came back, I weighed 100 pounds less than I weigh right now. So we had some issues to address. So anyway, I decided to delay law school, and then after some further reflection, realized how much I actually had enjoyed teaching. And I ended up going and doing a master's and then teaching, as I mentioned, for a number of years. And then came back to Penn State and did a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. And that was, as life has played out, did I anticipate those things? No, it just sort of, different doors open and others close, and it's been quite rewarding. The most rewarding part, as I said before, has been the chance to work with some great people. Really, just everywhere that we've been, we've always had good colleagues, people who remain fresh in our memories, good friends, and it's, in my opinion, as I've said many times to different folks, I think it's worthwhile to ask yourself if you're having fun. If you're not, then maybe you ought to think about, do I need to make a change of some kind?
Wow.
Most of the time I've been able to say, yeah, I am. It is fun.
That's good. And I think that it's important for any students that are watching to know that you're not always going to have fun every moment of every day in your work environment. But if you can craft an experience for yourself that is primarily fun, then it's winning, I think, in terms of.
Yeah. Even during a pandemic,
yep.
to look for what are the positives. And as I said before, there have been some real positives. I mean, just the way the campus has come together. I mean, you and Sonia and Ryan, and I know Tammy and others working together on the LionSide Chats. I mean, this has been quite an accomplishment and really, really positive, and something to be very, very thankful for. So, because it's helped with morale, it's helped to engage people. Those are the special things I think that we have to be very grateful for.
Well, we appreciate that, and we have heard from people all across campus that we would typically not interact with just because of where we're physically working or anything, just providing with all sorts of positive feedback about the chat. So we appreciate that. So I have two final questions for you as we wrap up here. One, I think you sort of alluded to when we were talking about fun, but the first thing is, any other words of wisdom that parting shots that you want to share as we're getting ready to wrap up?
Well, in terms of leadership, I would just reinforce what I said earlier. In my opinion, leaders should work hard on their humility and extra hard at minimizing their ego. I think ego can become a real stumbling block in my experience for leaders. There are different models of leadership. We've seen different models, at different levels all the time. I remember growing up when people worked together across party lines, across religious lines. Not that it was perfect, and we certainly we've realized where the divisions in this country, we talked earlier about systemic racism, there still are issues that we really need to address in this country. But I think to the extent that people can, well, let me say it this way. Biologists tell us that diversity in the world of the animal world, the plant world, the flora, the fauna, that diversity is a good thing. And out of diversity, you can actually, the collective, the community is stronger. And I think the same thing applies to, in my opinion, to human beings. Having been in the Peace Corps and lived in a Muslim village on the other side of the world, Suzanne and I learned some very profound lessons about difference, but also how much we share in common across humanity. And I think that's it's been worrying to me and to us to see what I would describe as more tribalism more recently and more divisiveness. And I think that as a country, this is my opinion, I think that we've got some real work to do to rediscover that you really can work with people who are different and who come, and you can learn from them, and vice versa. And that doesn't mean that you lose your identity. And that seems to me to be I'm perplexed by that. The idea that if I acknowledge the value of your culture, your faith, your whatever, that somehow that diminishes mine. I don't think that's the case at all.
No, I think it's quite the opposite, and I appreciate that. So, Dr. Hillkirk, one last question here. You are on the precipice of your retirement. What do you expect that to look like? What are you and Suzanne hoping to do?
Well, I think what I don't want to do, what we both want to do is continue to be really active. Mm-hmm. We love the outdoors. There'll be a little bit more time available now for walks and kayaking, and in my case, fly fishing. In Suzanne's case, sometimes she comes along because she's a rock hound. But more of that time, more time for our granddaughter, more time, just more personal time. But also, we hope to stay involved in things. We want to be. What I don't want to do is act tired in retirement. The best way to stay as young as possible is to stay active, physically, mentally, spiritually, every other way. So I also hope to continue to teach fly fishing. I haven't taught it this semester because of the pandemic, because of all the equipment sharing and other things that goes on. But I hope to continue to do that. And then beyond that, who knows? Maybe some travel. I'm sure there'll be unexpected opportunities that will arise.
I appreciate that. And I am so grateful to you for taking this time today. This has really been an interesting and fun way for you to tie a bow around your tenure as Chancellor of Penn State Berks. I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen to your perspective and reflections and your lessons learned. And you've certainly made an impact at Penn State Berks and Penn State University, the surrounding community and higher education. And so on behalf of my crewmates, Ryan and Sonia, I offer you our thanks once again for your support of our important programming with the LionSide Chats. And all of us at Penn State Berks wish you and Suzanne a joyous transition to your retirement. And thank you so much for being with us today, Chancellor.
Thanks, Dawn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And a special thank you to all of you for joining us today for today's LionSide Chat. And as you click out of our webinar, you'll receive access to a survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey to let us know what you thought about our chat and maybe even offer some ideas for future chats. We are excited to share that the spring semester will introduce another new series, a collaboration with various offices, plus our admissions folks on campus. Please join us for Majorly Prepared Penn State Berks Majors and Opportunities, and keep your eyes peeled for other faculty, staff, and students from Penn State Berks as they share their experiences. So stay safe, Berks and beyond. Signing off until 2020. Signing off until 2021. This has been Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. Thank you all. Thank you, Keith.